So we've got the Apache Raven on its side for the moment because we're going to do some work underneath here. I need to sand all this wood and spar urethane it to protect it from the grime and gunk when we're on the road. And then we're going to needle scale and wire brush all this metal. And we're going to use some Seal rust converter and then paint this metal. So that way the metal gets preserved as best we can. The whole underside of the camper has been sanded, and on the bottom here is our first coat of spar urethane that's been applied and been sitting for about 12 hours. Up here is our second coat, and it is looking gorgeous. Although it's not about the looks, it's about protecting the wood from the grime and the elements that it's going to be exposed to when driving down the road. The beautiful shiny gloss coloring, which will be even better when the third coat is applied and dried, is just a pleasant side effect. Our second application of the spar urethane is on the underside of the wood. We're just going to let this dry, do one more application, and then we're going to move towards de-rusting the frame here. So when it comes to removing rust, there's a lot of ways you can go about it. And the obvious solution is to start with a wire brush, but there are certain things that just work better in certain situations. So here's what I've been using. Got an angle grinder here. And it's got this special sort of synthetic material that's specifically designed for taking off rust, at least a decent bit of it. And it'll get, these good areas right here. However, it's big and it's a disc, so it just can't get into small crevices. So that's where things like a needle scaler really come in handy, because you just get all up in there with the needle scaler, and as slow and loud as it may be, it gets the job done. Now, this still looks like a lot of rust, and that's because it is a lot of rust. But that's okay, because we're getting down to the surface rust, which is all we need, because we're going to be using some rust converter. So what I'm doing now is applying this stuff called Seal. Now, as you'll notice, I'm putting it directly over the spots where there's rust. And that's on purpose. This is not a paint. This is a rust converter. It binds to the rust and then neutralizes the rust and prevents the rust from happening further for a short amount of time. Now when you apply it, it will turn this purple color, and after it sits for a bit, it will turn the metal black. And when that happens, now you've basically primed the surface for paints. So you're getting rid of the rust and priming the surface. Now it will take multiple coats of this stuff to ensure that the rust doesn't seep through. But if done correctly, in theory, this can help prolong the life of the metal that we are using for this camper. So it's been about an hour, and as you can see, the metal has turned black, and that is absolutely what is supposed to happen. Now, you'll notice there are areas that we covered in Seal that are still a bit rusty, and that's to be expected. You need to apply several coats, and you don't stop applying coats until the rust stops popping through. That's how to get the stuff to actually work. So we may be applying 2, 3, 4, heck, maybe 10 coats, but we won't know until we apply them. Alright, at this point we have got 3 coats of spar urethane on all the wood, or at least all the wood that I could access underneath of the camper, as well as I think 3 or 4 coats of Seal on the frame. And as you can see, the frame has turned this nice black color because it's converted the rust to a relatively inert substance. Now, I've still got some areas that I have to Seal yet. This side is being done currently, and it's only got its first application, but the rest of it seems to be going relatively well. Now that we've covered up the frame with the core seal and the rust converter has done its job, we're going to protect the frame even further by covering all that with some Rust-Oleum protective enamel, specifically oil-based stuff, because the oil-based is going to hold up better to the environment compared to water-based stuff. So when Seal is cured, it is a perfect primer surface for this sort of stuff. And we're going to go ahead and apply that, and we're going to see what one coat looks like and go from there. Boy, howdy, let me tell you, enamel is some sticky, messy stuff to work with, but it goes on pretty decently, and this is the second coat of enamel on the frame. Yeah, it seems to be going pretty good. I'm only going to do 2 coats of enamel on the frame here, because I think that's more than sufficient. And just got to let it dry for 24 hours, and at that point, this thing's just about ready to go. Now, after all these months, the camper is ready to go. It's time for me to venture outwards and explore this country